still like to eat the bean burritos because I arrived here. I think my first job 1 month. After 1 month of being in USA, I looked for work, and that's the only place they took me, right? And I didn't even know how to look for work, how to go interview. I was wearing my husband's like a sweatshirt, you know, and then like a man's sandal.
I was working at a fabric shop in San Francisco downtown called Britex Fabrics. I was in high school, and personally, I know nothing about sewing. Going over there, it took me a while to understand the difference between many different kind of fabric material and to understand what Velcro is actually.
Welcome everyone to another very exciting episode of Candid Conversations. Today we have two very special guests joining us from the Asian American community. They are actually very well-known community leaders, Margaret Zhao and Margaret Liang. And I'm going to let you both introduce yourselves with your roles in the community, but welcome to the show and welcome and thank you for making yourselves available for this interview. So please introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your role.
Thank you for having us, Aparna, and all this you have done for the community and very inspiring to us. And thank you, Margaret Liang. I love Margaret's name. She's a wonderful leader for our Tri Valley, and she will share with us. As myself, I'm a Pleasanton resident. I love my city here, and I love helping people in our community, and I'm more focused on providing natural healing, teaching, and also I love to bring laughter to people. So I'm a stand-up comedian, and also I'm an author and sharing my time, my life when I was growing up, and also my culture shock when I came to the USA. So
and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about all those aspects that you just talked about. So yes.
Yes. I'm very thankful for you to having us here and for your audience. And now I give the time to Margaret.
Hi, Aparna. Thank you so much for having us. Great honor to be here. And it's always wonderful to have meaningful and conversation with you in the past. And my name is Margaret, and currently I serve as the board president of Apapa Tri Valley. Apapa is a nonprofit organization. Its mission is to empower, educate, and inspire Asian Americans to get engaged in civic affairs, to contribute to become a part of the society. So in the past, we have done many civic leadership forum. We have hosted, summer internship program. We have done voters registration. And ultimately, we want to make sure that, the APIs are part of this society and their voice are being heard. So, but again, great honor to be here today.
So welcome both of you, Margaret, and how cool is that both of you have the same first names and involved so deeply into your community volunteer work. Very different in nature for Margaret Zhao and Margaret Liang, but we'll get into that. But for many people who don't know what APAPA is, it is the Asian Pacific Islander American Public Affair, right?
Right.
Okay. The one thing I do want you to talk about for our communities is the census, because I've been promoting that. Why is it so important to respond to the census questionnaire for those who haven't? So if you could sum it up for us, both of you.
Right. Many of the Asian American residents in the community, they may or may not feel as comfortable when they heard about census, and they feel that the census is there to get their personal information. But in reality, it is not. It is a way to really take count in the amount of community members that the government is serving. And so they really need to get an accurate account so that our city, our community will have the right amount of funding to support the kind of services dedicated to different kind of communities. Minorities are considered one of those hard to count community. And so APAPA is doing what we can to mobilize our community members to inform, as well as getting people to complete their Census 2020.
Wow, that was so well put together, and I'm supposed to be the district director, so thank you.
You taught us well.
And Margaret of Pleasanton, since you are a stand-up comic, would you like to put a comical spin to the Census 2020 so people see it as an essential part of civic duty?
I think this is really, to me, I thought this is really a wonderful thing to be counted. So you don't want to be left out. And if you can send me out with a mask to knock at the door, I will be willing to do that.
Thank you. Very well put together. So thank you for that. So let's get back to where you are from, your childhood. And if you want to take turns, we can do that. But essentially, tell us how your childhood was, where you grew up, your parents, grandparents, what was life like?
Margaret, you want to take a shot at that?
We'll start from the younger one.
We're not giving away ages here, so we'll just...
Right. Okay, so I came from Shanghai when I was 13, and growing up in Shanghai is very different. It's a big metropolitan city. However, being one of the 13 million residents that's in the city, a lot of time you feel lost. And I grew up in a family where we were told to really respect the elders, obey the teachers. And many times we weren't really given the chance to think about what we truly want. I think, you know, in China, it is in a society that is not really focusing on individuality. So when I first came to America, I was quite shocked. I remember I was sitting in the classroom. It was a ESL classroom, and we were having a field trip, and the teacher actually asked us, so we have a couple of options. Which one would you prefer? I was very shocked, and I remember asking myself, wait, are they asking us for our opinion? I mean, you know, aren't we supposed to just, you tell me where I'm supposed to go and I'll just go there. So that was the first, shock to me. But nonetheless, I had a very happy childhood. I, like many of the Asian family, I was, my dad was a second violin leader in Shanghai Symphony Orchestra, and my mom is was a chemistry professor in a university. So I came from a family with both artistic background as well as scientific background. So I was always being torn, I guess, between whenever I'm approached with a decision, should I, you know, go with my heart or go with my brain? That's always a constant decision process. But coming to America, I really start to feel that we have the ownership, and therefore we have the responsibility. And that's one of the most, the most important I think, guidance that I have, and that propelled me to get involved in the volunteer work, because I feel we are part of the society and in the community, and therefore we have to do our part, and we have to help shape the community to be the better community tomorrow.
Well, that's an interesting insight that you shared, that you were given the opportunity to present your opinion, which is something many Asian countries, I think the children growing up don't get an opportunity to do that. So
Right.
I'm going to come back to you for a couple of questions I have, but Margaret of Pleasanton, let's see how your childhood was compared to hers, where she said 13 million, that was the population of Shanghai. So let's hear about your childhood, where you grew up, and we want to know the numbers. How many people live there?
You know, my math is very poor. I know we didn't have a census then. I don't think I was counted then, so I don't have a number for you. Sorry.
None of us were probably counted in our respective states.
So I think, Aparna, you're very intelligent. You picked these two candidates to interview today. It's just totally opposite.
That's why we wanted you together.
Yes, you know, she grew up in the most glorious place in China, and I grew up in the most ignored and poorest place in China.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Tell us the city. We'll decide if it was ignored and
You
poor.
decide, okay. Let me see how can I say that. And Margaret said, and she was in such a big city, she was lost, right? You felt lost, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I would love to be lost, but then and because I was picked on by all my same like peers I grew up, because I was from the family of landlord. That's the enemy of the state. And then so they would call me names, and then so as I was a young girl, like 6 years old, I would go to the fields to collect the wild weeds, and then we needed to use that as food, right? So the other kids would there to collect too, and then so then they would like call me names. That's very insulting. They call me like a hog, like a old hog, like old hog. Yes, HOG. Is that the pig name? Is that right?
Yeah.
So then I always felt very unfair. So I was seeking for justice, and I had a lot of questions I couldn't get an answer. So then this is why when later I had the opportunity to come here, and then so later I became a speaker, a motivational speaker, and the people ask me these two things all the time. So how did you come to America? And after they heard me from China at that time, I said, Red China, right? So when I came here, there weren't many Chinese people at the moment, 89. And so then I said that I came here for freedom and love. And all the audience, they're very curious. Okay, forget about the freedom, talk about the love.
Well, I'm curious too. but let's go back. So which was the city? Which was this a city or was this a rural area where you grew up? Can you give us the name?
Rural. It's a very poor countryside. My parents were business people before liberation. And then so after the liberation, so they were their property were confiscated. And then they were sent to the countryside, but they didn't know how to work in the fields. So then, and then with all these kids, and they didn't want to have kids, but we just came without announced. And then it was really hard. This is why my book is called Really Enough. And that's my name. And they don't want anymore, really enough. They didn't want to have us. But then we just grew up under the poverty. There was somebody just the other day saying that, he had a hard childhood and his mom had to hold his hand, walking him long way to the hospital. I said, that's not a hard childhood to walk to hospital. I said, when I was sick, I didn't have a hospital to go. He said, then what did you do? I said, I went to a vet.
Did you really go to a vet? Or was it just to add
Yeah, really, it's a vet because I had a diphtheria. That was very deadly contagious disease at my time. And then so I had that, most of the children died. And then I didn't die because we know this vet, and he understood like powders to treat animals. So he used that kind of herbal powder to blow in the, we didn't have straw at that time. We had used the real wheat straw and then to get that powder and blow to my throat. I hated it. So, and then so I tried to hide and didn't like that. And then threatened. My father said, if you don't open your mouth, then we're going to use iron stick to pry your teeth open. So then I had to let them blow that to my throat. Terrible taste. And then
but
so as a result,
you didn't have the big needles the vets use. You didn't get to use. They didn't use that on you, right? They just used the herbal powder.
You had to go to the real doctor. You had to pay money, and then there wasn't any money, no food even. So no money, and then the vet did that for me for free. Obviously, my parents took advantage of that. So
let's talk to Margaret Liang now. She was nodding when you were talking about the straws, not having those. Shanghai is a very urban, metropolitan kind of a city. You still feel, when you were growing up, were there some things that you felt were missing elements? And how was schooling for you?
Actually, that's a very interesting question. I would say that you don't know what you don't know. So growing up, I have been a very obedient kid. I was the youngest of the family. My brother and sister were much older than I was. So everybody in the household was my boss. They bossed me around.
right.
Go get some soy sauce, go get the bread, go sweep the floor. You know, I'm just used to that. And when I hang out with the rest of the neighborhood kids, I don't feel that my life is any inferior than others. To be honest, we live a very frugal life because at that time, nobody was supposed to have more than what other people have. Everybody kind of have the same amount of share in terms of salary, in terms of the tickets for food. So people are content. People were not comparing that much. And the only thing that we're comparing really is our grade. And for that, I was under a lot of pressure, of course, you know, in a typical scholar family, your whole well-being is based on the kind of grade that you're getting. But nonetheless, when we are sick, we have a hospital, luckily, fortunate for us, although it's a big it's a hospital that serves many, many people in the neighborhood. And so to be able to actually get an appointment, sometimes you have to wait in line for a long time. You have to get up really early in the morning in order to do so. But other than that, we are tough kids. I feel like, you know, back then we're tough kids. We may get frostbites, we may get, you know, fever, we may have big injury from climbing the trees and whatnot, but it's not a big deal for us.
You survive, you toughen up and you survive. So
right.
How was schooling? Was there corporal punishment for both of you? Did you have to endure any of those beatings for talking or disobeying the teacher, or was everybody well behaved in the classrooms?
It did not happen to me, luckily, knock on wood. I don't, in my elementary school, I did not see much of the, what you call that? Corporal
punishment.
However, there is, they don't have any physical punishment per se, but you do have consequences, meaning that the teacher may shame you in front of the whole class. That's normal. You may be asked to face the wall and stand at the corner for extended period of time. You may be required to sweep the floor and clean up the whole classroom after the class. And the most scary part is, of course, writing a letter to your teacher, to your parents, and asking them to actually report to the principal's office. That is the scariest thing for me. But as far as physical punishment, I have not encountered anything.
And how many times did you have to write that letter to your parents? Do you recall growing up once or twice or more?
I prefer not to disclose that.
Facing the wall is the least of any student's problems. I had to face the wall so many times I lost count. I was a big talkative person, so never did it seem like a punishment to me. It seemed like I was seeing new things on the wall that I missed. But Margaret Zhao, I have to ask you, how was your schooling? I know you said people called you names, but you still went to school. Otherwise you wouldn't have written a great book. But how was it for you? Did you enjoy the learning process? Forget the bullying. I know that does impact learning, but did you enjoy that?
Loved it. Loved the school. But the thing is that during that time, I couldn't go to school because neither the culture revolution, the school closed, then you go to work labor. You go to school, then you carry sand, you carry bricks, you do labor work. And then meanwhile, the teachers and then the students, they ignore you, or they say they're shaming you because you are from the enemy's family. So then I didn't have to worry about writing a letter to my parents like Margaret, because who would write a letter to the enemy, right? So I was pretty safe. So
very, very different lifestyles. I can almost sense how unique each one had an environment to grow up in. I'm assuming dating or boyfriends, that's out of the question at this point for both of you. From what I'm hearing, it's all focused on education and work, and that's about it. Am I correct in that assumption?
Right. I came here when I was 13, so I didn't really get to experience much of that. But what I know is I was in middle school, and that school contains the middle school portion as well as the high school portion. And if a high school student was ever caught dating or walking too close with an opposite sex, then you will hear rumors everywhere in school. And the teacher will, again, write a letter to your parents. And for sure, you will be the talk about subject. The multiple teacher for different subjects, they will all take turn to invite you into their office to have tea with them, and they will explain to you why this is not appropriate and what might be the consequences if this continues.
So when you're talking about these letters, your postal service must be really busy in China if everybody's writing letters to. Is this a hand-delivered letter, or were these mailed by the teachers, the letter to the parents?
It is the letter that the teacher wrote, sealed, and asked you to bring it back to your parents.
Well, that's harsh, that you're carrying your own fate in that envelope.
Right. There was many struggles. I had to admit, many struggles along the way home. I was debating with myself, should I do so or should I not do so? Just pretend this never had happened.
What would be a consequence if somebody even dared try it to not deliver that letter? and say, I forgot, or just misplace it? Would the teacher then hold you accountable even more or visit your home? How did this work out?
The teacher will visit your home.
Oh, in Shanghai, isn't it a busy area, congested roads?
Well, the thing is this, remember, I live in a very populated city. So all of the students attending that particular school live very close by, about, let's say 10 blocks away, in a 10 block radius. And so it's very easy for the teacher to actually visit the home. And they will, if they don't hear back from the parents, they will visit the home and they will personally deliver the blow to you. But in any case, they are very well intentioned, but they just want to make sure that you are behaving and in school and you are turning in all of the homework that you're supposed to do so. To me, it doesn't seem to be a big issue, but for some of the boys in the class, it's hard. It's hard because it's difficult for them not to chit chat with each other, playing slingshot with each other in class. So they will get much more attention than we do.
How about you, Margaret Zhao? And as I was listening to Margaret's story, I'm thinking, as you are growing up, feeling all this bullying going on around you, looking at the opposite sex was probably out of the question at that time. But you stayed there longer than Margaret Liang. She came here at age 13. How was it for teenagers, young adults? Can you tell us a little bit about the life at that time?
Oh, we were from the countryside. For Margaret in Shanghai, that was much more open. But for us in the rural area, countryside, very backward place, no, you don't even think about it. That's not even in your mind of boys and the girls and a girlfriend, boyfriend. No, doesn't exist. So there isn't any thinking experience of it.
So I have to ask you, have you gone back to that place in recent years? Have you visited some of them?
Yes. It's totally different from what I grew up.
Is it still rural? Has it changed?
Oh, changed, and I couldn't find the little pond that's very dirty, and the cow would take a bath there, and then I would go there to get the water home and drinking the water and using the water to cook. So I went there to look for that pond, and I couldn't find it. So then I had to ask the local and make sure that they remembered and then showed me that place, but it's residential. So it's much changed.
Okay, so now let's bring ourselves to the life in America with Margaret Liang. You said you moved at 13. Of course, you described the first shock where people actually asked you for your opinion. What else was different for you, and how did life progress once you settled in as a family? Where did you come in America? Which city?
I came here, I came to San Francisco when I first landed in America. I had a very different vision of what America is. It's supposedly a Western country and supposedly a very technologically advanced place. And San Francisco is one of a bigger city in the United States. So I was expecting to see huge high-rise buildings everywhere. And as I was sitting in the car from San Francisco airport going to San Francisco inner city near the Richmond district, all the buildings that I see on the side of the freeway at that time was about 2-story, 3-story buildings. I was actually quite shocked and a bit disappointed. However,
why were you disappointed?
I was expecting really prosperous, glorious cities of, with tons of high-rise and skyscrapers. But no, I did not. But instead, to my pleasant surprise too, I see plenty of trees. I see trees. I remember making a comment to my parents. The leaves were so green, it looked like they were painted. The sky was so blue, the clouds are so white, it looks like a painting to me when I first came. Especially when I went past some Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. It was such a tranquil setting, and I was very pleasantly surprised by that.
Was this something that you feel was missing in Shanghai and it impressed you? Is that something?
Right. I mean, the one thing we're not missing in Shanghai is people, right? And coming here to San Francisco, seemingly one of the larger city in United States, I feel that I see a lot more trees than I see people. Second thing is what I notice is people are really friendly. They stop by to say hi. They ask, even for strangers, they ask, how are you? Whereas in Shanghai, we comment, we talk to our friends and whatnot, but people have a very busy lifestyle. So they're always on the go. So the pace of life is much slower over here, and it allowed you a chance to really breathe and smell the rose.
Now, when you say the pace is slow, you are comparing it to the slower pace when you moved here, or even now you feel it's slower than how it is in Shanghai?
I think even now I feel that the lifestyle in America, in San Francisco per se, is slower. Even if you compare San Francisco to New York, you will feel that people walk faster in New York. And if you go to Shanghai, they walk even faster than that. And so I feel that the San Franciscan lifestyle is a little bit more leisure.
Okay, so Margaret Zhao, Margaret Liang talked about her arrival at a very young age. When did you arrive in the US, and did you have anything planned, or were you just going to see where life takes you and then reach whichever destination city you were going to be at? How did that happen?
I could understand Margaret. She came from Shanghai in the high buildings and like forest, and then I expected America the same way. But I came through Hong Kong after you stay a few days in Hong Kong. It's just really the buildings and skyscraping like a forests, right? So then when we flew over from San Francisco to LA, and then I looked down, and then the houses, they were like just match boxes, and after arrival, and then I saw no high buildings. Like in San Francisco would be a little bit better than Los Angeles, I would think. So very surprised and found it very strange. How could it be advanced Western country can be in such a flat and then not impressive buildings? So then from that later, I realized, wow, it's even better without the high buildings. So I felt that was taking some time to understand the difference. And of course, I felt very fast because I was not from Shanghai, from the country. So then that's like a city life. And then also Margaret got to go to school here. So she probably could feel more, how to see, customized with the culture a little. But I was just thrown right there. And then supposed to go to find a job, supposed to understand everything people are saying. I couldn't. So I could read everything, but when you say it, they don't slow down for you. And then you don't understand it. So as a result, I went to look for work. My first job was working in Taco Bell. And then, so then I had to learn Spanish because my coworkers, they all speak Spanish. So I worked there and learned a lot of what the names of the food. And then I learned money. I had to learn a dime, like a quarter, and all new to me. So I had to learn everything. And then I got paid $4.15 an hour. That was a lot of money. I felt rich each hour I worked.
What was your favorite item on in Taco Bell's menu at that time?
Bean burritos.
Okay.
I still like to eat the bean burritos because I arrived here. I think my first job 1 month. After 1 month of being in USA, I looked for work, and that's the only place they took me, right? And I didn't even know how to look for work, how to go interview. I was wearing my husband's like a sweatshirt, you know, and then like a men's sandal. Went to interview, and then they made me answer the question from the corporate instead of the interviewer. I had to answer question from whoever the headquarters. I couldn't understand anything. And then so
that's a struggle. That's a struggle, understanding the ways of life, definitely for a newcomer to pick up a whole lot of things. So I can understand your challenge. One of the things that you mentioned that was the accent. That was very hard for you. When did you feel that you finally were getting it, what they were saying, and you were processing it correctly? Do you remember a time? Did it happen while you were at Taco Bell?
It kind of took me not too long for me to understand the others because I had to study, right? I took the Taco Bell menu home and to recite the names. Okay, burrito, burrito, bean burrito, bean burrito. I would read it. Okay, taco, taco. Everything is new. And then it came to another word. It's called tortilla, tortilla, tortilla. I was reading, trying to remember tortilla. And I didn't know how it sounded, tortilla. So it took me a little a while. Then I was able to say that and felt very proud after I mastered all those names.
Well, that is commendable. So Margaret Liang, what was your, I mean, there has to be a culture clash even at home because now you're trying to settle in and there is a different culture outside the home and something different inside the home. How was food or other things, friends, how did that factor into your daily life? Was that easy? Was that stressful? And what was your favorite place to eat out at?
That is a lot of questions. Coming here, my favorite food is onion ring from Burger King. I clearly remember the first time when I tasted and I talked to my father's student. My father was a violin teacher at that time. And we went on a competition where I was the piano accompanist for the students, and the parents took us to Burger King. Upon having the onion ring, I turned around and I told my dad, this is by far the most delicious food I have ever tasted. I don't want to eat anything else for the rest of my life. I only want onion rings. So that was very impressive to me.
I have to ask you, have you stopped eating onion rings or is it still your favorite?
Good question.
It is still my favorite. If I ever step foot in the Burger King, that is a must-have. That is a must-have. And that is the thing that I kind of look forward to when we're having road trip nowadays. I kind of want to pass this on to my kids, you know, to make them appreciate the onion ring back then. As far as the clash of culture in the family setting, that's a definite yes. Even though both of my parents are fairly open-minded, my mom being a professor in university back in China and my dad being a violin teacher, there is still a certain set of behavior or a standard that they expect from me, even though I came to America. And so after I came here for about less than a year, I started to form and shape my own opinion on different things. I would exchange these ideas with my parents, and especially with my mom. Some of them may not agree with her. Obviously, she tried very hard to understand, but at times when she could not, she tried very hard to convince me. And when it's not working, her comment is, "You're so corrupted. America has corrupted you." I remember those lines. We still jokingly talk about this back then, and she was really glad that I actually shared my opinions with her as I was growing up, because coming here at the age of 13, it's adolescent years, and those are the years that you start to become, you start to seek value in yourself, and that you start to become more defiant as before. And so that timing, coupled with, you know, my arrival into America, it's a bigger shock to her than my sisters and brothers. But she took it really well. I'm sure it's a hard period of time for her, but she took her patience, and I'm thankful for that.
And they seem to be more open in their thinking if they were already looking. I mean, you said your mom was working back in Shanghai, so obviously would have a more liberal outlook towards life. It was probably the cultural things that they were holding on to and feeling that that's. So Margaret Zhao, now you came at a much later stage in your life to the US. Other than the Taco Bell experience, where you were obviously establishing independence for yourself, how was it for you at home? Was there a difference there? Did you experience any conflict, any challenges with your home life?
Yes, everything is different, because my husband was a teacher in China. We met there. So when I came here, he's American, and then so he didn't understand the culture shock I go through, and I didn't understand that he didn't understand me. So it was really, really hard to have a really harmony life at home. And then you go to work, and then you don't understand much at work, and then things start to happen for me to be moving up to a better job. I found a better job. I was good at interviewing, and I found a better job, but then I wasn't qualified for that job in UCI Medical Center. And then so the first time I worked there, and then they made me answer the phone, and they said, "Oh, this is so and so from what area I am making an appointment for hysterectomy," and I couldn't write all this down. So I made them repeat, and then finally they gave up the phone call.
So did you feel you would have to go back to school and get some additional qualifications to get these jobs, or did you just go on with?
No, couldn't afford to go to school, so I had to work, and then I worked there for 2 months, and then they laid me off. They fired me, right? Because what happened is that the manager and her husband called, and then asking to speak to the manager. Then I supposed to write down the name, right? He gave me a name. It's kind of long. The first name and the last name are very long, and I couldn't write down. So I made him spell very simple name. Now I'm thinking about maybe Matthew, some Huntington or something. So I made him, for other people, very easy to write down, and I made him spell every letter. And then finally I got it over. And then next day I was fired.
for making him spell out his name.
And because I had another problem of spelling the disease and then the patient's name. So that was the last straw for the manager. And then I came home, I held my daughter, I felt very bad. I said, I couldn't even provide for you. I'm fired for this job. So I felt really down and for a while, and then I rose again. So then I look at news and paper. So I saw more like an opening in the UCI. I went to a medical center. I went to apply again. So then I was hired, and then I would pay a visit to the old manager, and then we smiled to each other. Didn't hold anything.
So it worked out. It worked out in a roundabout way. How was your first job experience, Margaret Liang? Wait, I mean, did you start working in school when you were in school? Or
yes. I started working when I was in high school to help out with the family. I was working at a fabric shop in San Francisco downtown called Britex Fabrics. I was in high school, and personally, I know nothing about sewing. Going over there, it took me a while to understand the difference between many different kind of fabric material and to understand what Velcro is actually is. However, you know, it was a great learning experience, and I met many great and crafty kind of people. I'm very thankful for. But I did make the food out of myself. I remember because San Francisco is a very touristy kind of city, and the fabric shop being situated right in the downtown San Francisco, we have a lot of tourists. And there was one time there was a Japanese customer came in, and she tried to explain to me in broken English of what she is looking for. And I happened to be taking Japanese as my foreign language class in high school. And so I volunteered. I was like, oh, you know what? You can speak Japanese to me. She was elated. She was so happy. And she started talking in a long paragraph of Japanese to me. I was clueless. I had no idea what she was talking about. And my manager was standing right behind me. So yeah, I made a fool out of myself.
So you understood that you would have to go through more Japanese lessons before you can communicate.
Right. I understood that Japanese is not just, hi, how are you? Good morning and good night.
Of course, that's with any language. As Margaret Zhao said, when she was in Taco Bell, she had to pick up Spanish. I'm sure it was not fluent Spanish you were speaking in. It was just words here and there.
Right.
Tell us about one thing that I know and this is from TV shows, so I may be wrong in my assumption. A lot of the shows that I've seen show people in China, they have a food culture where many people eat outside. The street food scene is very active. Was it the same with both of you, and did you miss that after you came here?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. That is the culture. People go to the night market for foods. Foods were a way of bringing people together in the Asian culture, especially. All festivities, all holidays revolves around foods. So there are really exquisite foods that's passing down from the royal family, or the kind of cuisine that's offered in the Forbidden City, let's say, in the royal setting. And then down to the really street foods that, you know, ordinary people have. So we truly enjoy the wide variety of different kind of ways to cook the same kind of material, like tofu. You know, they have the really exquisite preparation of tofu where they can slice the soft tofu into sheets and into underwater. They will slice them into sheets and then cut them into fine thread-like material, even finer than noodles. And then they will cook with that. Or they will ferment it in the ordinary family, they ferment it and to have stinky tofu. So it's a wide spectrum.
So was it the same for you, Margaret Zhao? I mean, I know yours was a more rural setting, but were people going out to eat, or were they cooking at home?
Still, you picked us the opposite.
So you were eating out, you were not
We
eating
don't
out.
have
as-
food. If
Okay.
you have food, we call it we say 吃饭. This means eat rice. So if you have rice, then you are lucky. So then what we have is that if you have somehow a relative, a really important visitor come to visit, then the family would have the whatever is the best would serve. Then sometimes we just growing up, and I would wish that somebody come to visit. Then you have something better
Special.
to
Yeah. So when Margaret Liang, you talked about the dishes from the royal family coming down and into the street food scene. As in India, when you have royal chefs preparing those dishes, there are recipes that are guarded and recipes that are shared by the common public. Is that the same in China in general, or specific to Shanghai? Would you?
Well, secret recipe is always around. There is different. I'm trying to figure out a way. You know how Kung Fu have different styles, and they come from different ancestors, and same thing happening with cooking. So there are different styles of cooking, and they pass it down either within the family or within the quote unquote school. So in certain area of China, those recipes are only shared with son, but not with daughter. There are local families that sells the street foods in their special different kind of ways that you cannot mimic or copy elsewhere. Partially is because there are a lot of, in China, the land is vast, and each area has its own local vegetable, local material, raw material that you use. So that makes a difference. And second thing is how they prepare it. And there might be some really authentic and maybe not the most efficient way of preparing for it, but it helps create a certain flavor. Say, for example, they will have a chicken, they will wrap it in banana leaves or whatnot, and then they put mud around them, and then they bury them under the ground with the sun shining on them during the summertime. It acts as an oven. So the marinated chicken inside the banana leaf will eventually be slow cooked, and all the while seep in the flavor and fragrance of the banana leaves. And then they will come out. But nobody will share about those. They will, appreciate the food, but they're not to talk about.
So I'm assuming we don't even have access to those recipes in the US, in any of the Chinese on
No, you do. I mean, because now everything is so open, sharing and the recipes on TikTok, for example, is very fashionable. People are fighting for more subscription, and so they become a lot more open to share what they do. And I have to say, nowadays the kids become a lot more savvy because of those YouTube or TikTok sharing. They become a lot more in the know of what is a good standard, what is good out there. And so they're savvier than we were.
Kids today are definitely. Margaret of Pleasanton, how did stand-up comic happen in your life? When did you realize that's something, a talent you have?
It was very interesting. My first, I was working a job, and then I listened to the radio, and then the radio hosts, they were talking about politics, and then they said bad things about the president and they made fun of the president. I was really surprised. How dare you do that? And later I started to watch the sitcom. And then we didn't have that at the time in China. I was just really interested, but I wasn't really impressed. Like Roseanne, that was the first one I remember. And then, so the kids are really rude. I said, oh, why is they are now the children talking back to the parents, very rude. And then, of course, I did enjoy the humor. And then I started to watch the stand-up comedy. And then, so when I started to teach Tai Chi and healing art, so I have many fans. They are like my followers. I teach them. And then I would describe the movements in a very funny way. And then later they said, oh, Margaret, you are very funny. And you make us laugh. You should go to the improv. I said, what's the improv? I said, just in Irvine, you can go there and then tell them jokes. So I collected those things that they like to laugh. So then I called the club. I didn't know better. If I knew how big a deal was, I would never do it. I didn't know better. So I said, okay, I said, I would like to tell jokes. They said, oh, okay, so why not you come on Tuesday night for the open mic? And I just went there. I'm thinking I'm going to talk to the manager and offer my jokes. But then I didn't know I was lined up with the whole line of comedians and in live audience. I never understood what it was like to go on the stage, they announce your name, you go on the stage, and then that light blinded my eyes, and it's all dark, and my brain went blank. But then I had to recover myself, and then
and this was in Irvine, you said? This happened there?
Improv.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then I recovered myself from it, and then I did tell my joke. Obviously, I did good enough, and then the manager said, "Okay, you will be the regular," which means you can come regularly. And then thinking back, I never bombed, so I felt proud. Now, you know, other people, they are Americans. They are all, you know, English perfect. I'm not. And then they are so nervous. They comb their hair and then reciting their notes at the backstage. And I just didn't. I just walked there. So,
your imperfection was the perfection. It came naturally. That's what I think works in comedy. It has to be done. Did you perform in China? Did you ever go back and perform there?
I just gave a speech when the last time I went to China. I went to the same school I taught. It was like how many thousand students, and then they asked to ask me to talk to them about America, and then they asked again, why did you go to America? That was a very hard question for me to answer in China. I couldn't say I was going there for freedom. I said,
your freedom would have been probably compromised if you said that.
So then I had to say, oh, I went there for love. And I got them all so interested. It was very interesting. You know, the audience from here and there is totally
very different. So Margaret Liang, your life is completely opposite. It's running on a parallel but opposite track to Margaret Zhao's life. How you are also, I heard you play the piano on your dad's birthday or something. I saw a clip. Music obviously was a part of your life growing up. Other than that, is there anything else that you would like to share? Any other talents?
Oh, I have no talent. I would not even say my music is considered a talent, but I do enjoy music. I'm not a stand-up comedian, but what I have found is that the ability to bring people together, I think, is something that I gradually start to recognize that we'll be able to listen with an open mind and find a way to bridge the difference. And I think that is very important in my job as well. I work currently in the marketing department of food companies, and so always find out what is needed and how do we bring the difference together? How do we bridge the difference and to make things happen? So that's what I enjoy.
Well, both of you, I mean, you have talents in your own field. I mean, for Margaret Zhao, the talent comes because she has gone through a lot of life experiences and that she can talk about. At some point, you get married, Margaret Liang. And where did you meet your husband and where did you get married?
Oh, I met with my husband in my own house. He happened to be the college classmate of my elementary school classmates. So my classmates came from Santa Cruz to visit me in San Francisco. And he had nowhere to stay in San Francisco. He stayed with his college classmate who happened to live about 2 blocks away from my house. And he brought Z over. And I had to admit, I found Z to be really rude and arrogant because he was just very naturally cool, right? But yeah, at that time I was really excited to see my elementary classmates. So we were busy talking and engaging, and all the while the college classmate was sitting on the side in silence. But eventually I think we got an opportunity to go karaoke, and we found out that both of us, you know, love karaoke, and we all close our eyes and sing our guts out, and, you know, oblivious of what other people think about us. So yeah, so that become one of the common kind of
so the only reason you found him rude was because he was quiet?
He was quiet and not very engaging. He was just sitting there and listening to the conversation. And in the Asian culture, that's a little bit cold.
So they are supposed to be engaging in a conversation.
Well, usually, especially when you become a guest of somebody's house, and you're supposed to engage in the conversation. And the way that I was brought up, at least, we were taught to engage people in conversation, and we were taught to ask how you're doing and find out more about you and whatnot. The time, I mean, I was surprised that my elementary classmate brought a friend to start with, and so out of politeness, I feel that I need to engage the guests in our conversation, even though we talk a lot about the past that he was not part of, but he was just very quiet and very reserved.
But aren't men supposed to be that way? They're supposed, we expect them to be a little quieter so we can do all the talking.
Exactly.
Zhao will agree with me. I knew she was going to agree, but you said you could not tell in China why you left China. So it was because of love. So tell us how you met your husband and how your journey was.
That's a long story. So this is why
abbreviate it for us in some way. Summarize it.
This is why I just have to use that as I went to America for love. And then the next question. Okay, forget about the freedom, right? I said the 2 things, right? Freedom. I come to USA for freedom and for love. And then the American audience would say, forget about the freedom. We want to hear about the love. Did it work out for you? And then I said, yes and no. That's the answer.
But you met your husband back in China.
Yes.
And then
he was teaching 1 year in university in Wuhan. And that's the time I was a teacher already. I went to Wuhan, one of the universities, to take advanced class. So we met there, and his friends were also from America, were our teacher, English teachers. So I got to meet them and then get acquainted. And then later, when Tiananmen Square at 89, things happened in June, May, that time. So he was really worried that I was in danger. So he sold his truck so that he could have some money to travel and to go to China. Also, the truck bought the ring and then borrowed the user credit card and traveled to China and married me there. And then came here.
Was it a traditional Chinese ceremony or was it a more Western?
No, I had to be very secret and not letting anybody know, because Americans at that time still called devil, ocean devils. And not even my family, part of my family, they didn't even know. So I just took off and came here.
So before we get to your next stages of life and your volunteer work and your involvement in other things, I have to ask you about Wuhan. You mentioned that it's in the news a lot lately. And so can you describe to an outsider how Wuhan is and how does it look to a person who's been there and seen the place? Just an idea.
Yes, Wuhan considered the capital of the province and it's the biggest city. And then always admiring people, they could be the residents of Wuhan, as I was from the countryside. And then I was able to stay there as a free babysitter in my teenagers, like 13, like your age coming to USA. I was full-time babysitting my sister's twin kids as a maid and free too, working for free. But I got a new jacket. That was the best thing ever I owned. So I knew the East Lake, I knew the Wuhan University, I admired those people could go to university. And so I knew the place very well. And then the Yangtze River, and you have to go take a picture there and then prove you were there. And so later when I went back to visit after I came to USA, totally changed. I couldn't go out anywhere by myself anymore because I couldn't find my way. Much changed. And then the last time I went is 2015. And then the air was very bad. For them, it's a really nice day, was the sunny day. All the students of the college would take out their quilt to put under the sun. And then, but the air was like a haze. You couldn't see the sun. It's just like you can see the wrong sun through the pollution, very bad. And so that was my sad feeling. And because I could see that from America, but when I was there, I never noticed it because that's supposed to be that. So that's the difference. And now Wuhan's weather, air is much better because of the quarantine, because of shutting down of things. And I just got the pictures this morning from China, and the East Lake is beautiful and peaceful.
So you feel the quarantine helped clean up the environment a little with people not using as many cars? Or...
Oh, definitely, yes. Yes.
And there's a lot of talk about the lifestyle in Wuhan and how people are. Can you explain to us how people, is it a different cultural kind of an expectation there as opposed to where you were growing up, or even Shanghai, as Margaret Liang talked about, the street food, the street life? Is it different in Wuhan?
Yeah, in a way, it can be similar. Yeah, street food. Yeah, a lot of street food. I don't know about the royal food. I never had the experience of that. Street food we love because it's cheap and convenient and it's your taste, right? So that's what I loved it. When I go back to China, I would eat street food there.
So Margaret Liang, have you gone back to Shanghai? Do you agree with Margaret about the air quality being poor in Shanghai?
Yes or no. I don't go back very often because most of my families are over here. But when I went back, I usually go back during the November time, October, November time, where there is, it is cooler and there's some rain. And after the rain, the air quality is usually pretty good. But comparatively speaking, Shanghai is just much busier. and therefore much polluted air quality wise. I have received pictures of hazy morning where you can see the red air, meaning that the sun is seeping through the haze, but turned orange or red. And you can't see very far, even when you are in a high rise. I remember even back then, we got to wash our clothes very often, because when you wear a white shirt in the morning, and by the time that you come back, it's a gray shirt. Back then. And so I think, pollution is a big problem. But what I have heard recently, I think I went there actually last November to have a trip with my elementary, classmate to Hangzhou. And what I have heard is now the government is taking more drastic issues on the environment. And so what they do, say for example, along the Yellow River, where as it through the port of Shanghai, there are many small streams, right, coming off from it. And it used to be really stinky because nobody is managing it. People are dumping garbage in there and whatnot. And so we always call this stinky creek. That's how we call them. But now they have implemented a system where the government will hire a manager for each of these creeks. So they have a certain distance. So all the manager is doing is to drive up and down that stream every day to see if there's any garbage. And they will clean up the garbage on their own. And if they see that any nearby businesses, manufacturing facilities are dumping chemical, into the stream, they will report them. They will give them citation. So very quickly, within a year, the stream become clear. You can actually see the bottom. And then you don't have that kind of smell anymore. So I don't know what is the cost of doing so, but it is an effective measure, which I am quite surprised at, and it's pleased to see. But nonetheless, pollution is a huge issue.
And that's, I think with the increase in population management and everything comes into focus, like how they want to manage with all their resources available and spread it out through every different area.
Correct,
exactly.
Correct.
So let's talk about your involvement in the community. Margaret Zhao, you are involved with the American Taoist Institute and also the Life Renewing Center. Could you tell us about that and what made you get involved in that?
I just came to USA. What I discovered that I didn't have a health insurance. So then I realized it was really expensive. So then with the culture shock, with the anxiety, and I got sick. And then very poor health, and I went back to China, and I learned natural healing methods and from the teacher there, and also from my sister. She learned very well, and she was able to teach in China, and then I was her student. So I came back, I was still working at the UCI, and I started to apply acupressure points and then teach them the Tai Chi, the movements. And then even the doctor at the clinic of UCI, they would call me saying, okay, would you like to come here? We have a patient that wouldn't respond to medicine, and with the headache so severe, can you see if you can help? Then I put the acupressure points working on the person, and they could drive home and without in such a pain. So and I felt very proud of myself I could do that, although I wasn't very good at that moment. And then some nurses, they have really stiff neck, and then I would relieve that, and really happy. Just my own time there, I pass by them, so they know me very well. So then after that, I just quit my job. I went to teach in the massage schools, teach in the churches, and I became my own little, how to say, enterprise. Not making much money, but that's something I enjoy doing. So after I came to from Southern California to Pleasanton, I realized that here I never saw any wellness fair. I don't see any teaching like natural medicine, except you can go to the city to learn certain classes. So I just started this nonprofit because I gave a talk in the library. People really loved my concept, and then they bought my book. They read what I described in the book about natural healing, and then they helped me to establish a nonprofit organization. So then that's what I have been teaching for almost 5 years. Every Tuesday, every week, we have free class till this situation happened. So we are very inactive.
And that information we would like to include at the end of the presentation, the video presentation. If anybody wants to reach out, we will put that information in. Margaret Liang, you also have a very extensive involvement in the community. Can you tell us what was the turning point? I know your family, your dad especially, you had mentioned, was involved in volunteering in some form or the other, but what was the turning point for you? You felt the need to be involved, and your role in the community?
I think all along I have been quite active in school, whether in China, probably not as much when I was over here. However, I always feel that especially after coming to America, feeling that you do have a sense of ownership to your own being, your behavior, your life. You have better control of your life. And what comes along with it is the sense of responsibility. And as we are forming our own little family, and when our kids were born, that sense becomes stronger. And when I see that there's something that I can help with in the community, it's naturally you wanted to offer. Especially coming to Dublin, I think the sense of community is very strong. I remember there was a fire that took place in the back hill of Tasahara Hill in Dublin. And during that time, everybody offered their help. Do you need to stay at my home? Do you need some clothes? I'll bring over foods. And so the sense of community is so strong, and that makes you feel that you are a part of it, you belong, and therefore you want to make it better. So when APAPA's Tri-Valley chapter's founding president, Andy Lee, approached me asking me to help with the organization, number one, I really echo the mission of the organization. And number two, I really feel that I can make a difference. I can bring value. And therefore, I joined and helped.
And that journey has taken you into different experiences, meeting different people from different backgrounds. It always feels fulfilling. I'm sure you've experienced many different cultures along the way, and how you can relate to those cultures and those experiences. So how involved are your kids? Are they, I mean, you must be a huge role model for them as well. Are they a part of this? Are they looking at something else?
They are, again, you know, we are in a very open-minded kind of family. I don't apply any pressure for them, but they are all involved in their own activities per se. My son is very much involved in the robotic club, and you know, participating in the first robotic competitions from Lego, now moving on to the next division. My daughter is in choir, and so their characteristic is very different from mine. However, they always try to help when things happens, and where they feel that they can make a difference. So that's the part that I'm happy to see. I mean, you know, to me, I remember yesterday, the mayor of Livermore, Mayor Marchand, has said one line really well, which he quoted from Martin Luther King. You don't have to be an Einstein to serve. You don't have to be a prodigy to serve. You just need to have a heart to serve. And I think that is the most important lesson in my life, and I'm hoping to pass it down to the kids as well.
And those are very powerful words. So Margaret, now I have to ask you, we all have had really enough with this sheltering in place. I'm sure that was not in mind when you wrote the book, really enough. What made you pen down your thoughts into a book? And it's a best-selling book. Tell us a little bit of how that happened. Did it bring back memories of growing up, painful ones, obviously? How was it? How was the experience?
I really agree with Margaret. She talked about that you feel belonging here. That's what, you know, I was excluded when I was growing up as the enemy of the state. But then I came to USA. I feel that this warmth and then belonging, and then Pleasanton especially, is a smaller city, and you start to have friends, make friends. And then when I first came here, I didn't have any friends. I really appreciate the friends' energy. And then I look for something I can participate. Then the newcomer, called a newcomer group, I discovered. And then I went to participate, and then I got to know them. So then they formed my book club. They invited me because I was so needy. I want to make friends with the people. So then they included me. Then we read the first book called The Help. Have you read that? That was a movie. Mm-hmm. And so that was the first book we're supposed to read. And then after that, you're supposed to discuss in a book club. And all those women, they are just really amazed about how those people working as maids in the rich people's home, how miserable, how sad their life was and all that. So I look at them, then they say, okay, it's your turn to talk about it. I said, I finished the book. I thought that their lives better than mine. So they look at me, I was dressing okay, you know, like what you have a life there to compare with theirs. So then they ask me, so I said a few things about how I grew up, and then they were just like, eyes so big, and since then, every time they just like target me, and you have to share with what your life is. And finally, one day they said, you need to read a book. And so she said, I will help you. So then she took me, have a meeting with her, and then so, okay, well, I'm going to write, and she's going to be my editor and all that. So then after she dropped me off from her house, then I changed my mind. I said, no, I'm not going to write the book. She said, why? We just discussed it, and then you are going to start. I said, no, because for people to write the book about their memoir and the biography, they are successful, they are famous, they achieve the big things. Who am I? I said, I'm nobody. No, I'm not going to write it. So she wouldn't let me leave the car without agreeing to write it. Finally, I said, oh, she doesn't know better. She just still thinks that it's worthwhile writing. She said, you don't understand, it's about survival. You just started. And so that's how I started. And then afterwards, I didn't know would cause all those American readers so much passion and compassion at the same time. So then in return, I feel very thankful and inspired. They said they were inspired by my life story, but I'm inspired by them. So this is why I want to work harder for community and bring my little skill to everyone, that they appreciate the style I offer of cleaning and teaching the exercise for better health.
Yes, and it is also, again, a journey for a lot of people who may not have a similar experience or background, but at least there will be some similarities in experiences in their life. So bringing that together, what would be something you would both, and this is for both of you, given the recent incidents and what has happened with this pandemic, a lot of people have said and written a lot of things. How would you like to have a message for the Chinese American community? How would they, or how would people think about what's going on? It's nobody's fault or pointing fingers. What would be a message for the people who are probably misinterpreting a lot of the information and essentially targeting Asian American communities all over?
Well, first of all, I like to express that how what I have seen is really inspiring. I understand that under the current situation, there are some people who may be misinformed and may be targeting Asian American, whether by breaking the glasses of their stores or calling their names or giving them a certain speech during their grocery shopping trips and whatnot. But even in the face of that, what I see is more and more Asian American and especially Chinese American, they are sharing their resources. They are bringing in a lot of precious supplies, and they are donating tons and tons of them into different community agencies and first responders. So it's really inspiring to me. And I have one message, and I think it is not the failures that define us, but rather it is what we do in face of the adversity that define us. And I think we as a culture have the sense of perseverance and the strong sense of commonwealth. And I think it is best illustrated in times like this. And I do strongly believe that together we'll be stronger.
And I wholeheartedly agree with that statement. Anything else that Margaret, you would like to add to this?
I think Margaret said it perfectly. I totally agree with her, expressing myself too. Stronger together.
So this is a universal message, actually. It's not just to this city or this community, it's everywhere, it's the world over. Anything else you would like to share in closing? Any message, anything that we didn't discuss, that we left out, would you like to highlight?
I just like to thank you, Aparna, for, all along, you have been a community leader and with the wealth of information, always trying to help with the community to find their resources. And for inviting us today, I see this really, a chance to get to know each other better. But on top of that, also to know the culture a little bit better as well. Especially at times like this, people are more focusing on the differences rather than on the commonalities. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to reshift our focus and see if we can bridge our differences and together.
And enjoy the onion rings from Burger King while we are at it.
Definitely.
And anything, Margaret, do you want to add anything? And also, I have to say, you said the word pig was used. I don't see it as derogatory, honestly. It is a wonderful animal. And isn't that a part of the Chinese zodiac, the year of the pig, the year of the rat? I see it as an honor, actually. So,
Oh, not just the hog. They put another adjective in front of it. Landlord hog.
I see, okay.
Landlord is the bad.
Okay. See, we didn't know that part. I was just thinking the whole time, I'm like, I don't see the pig as being, actually I'm wearing a pink color right now. So I love that color.
Really good thought, and you're very positive, inspiring.
Yes.
梨花开，爱春带雨，梨花落，春与你，此生只为一人去，到他今晚，情也迟，情也迟。Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful
That was
conversation
wonderful.
we had. Yes, it was really beautiful. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking about your culture, your country, and your life, your journey. So thank you for sharing this with all of us, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Aparna.
Thank you, Aparna.
Happy Friday.
Wonderful. Have a wonderful weekend. 梨花开，爱春带雨，梨花落，春与你，此生只为一人去，到他今晚，情也迟，情也